In my last video, I talked briefly about the history of the Brandy Gap Tunnel. This time I want to go a little deeper into that background and some of the stories connected to it before getting into my own experience. The Flinderation Tunnel, also known as Brandy Gap Tunnel Number 2, is located near Salem in Harrison County, West Virginia. It was constructed in the mid-19th century as part of the railroad system connecting Grafton and Parkersburg. Construction on the tunnel began in the early 1850s and was completed in 1857. It was commissioned by the Northwestern Virginia Railroad and later used by the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. The tunnel remained active for more than a century before being taken out of service in the 1990s as the railroad traffic in the region declined. Like many railroad projects from that era, the tunnel was dangerous to build and operate. Historical newspaper reports document injuries and at least one fatality during construction, including a worker who was killed when a cave-in occurred inside the tunnel. These accidents reflect the hazardous conditions faced by railroad laborers at the time. The tunnel runs directly beneath the historic Brandy Gap Cemetery, which existed before the railroad was built. Over time, this connection has become a major part of the tunnel's reputation. Some people believe that water runoff from the cemetery passes through the ground and into the tunnel, contributing to reports of unusual activity inside. There are also accounts and local traditions that associate the area with racial violence in the early 20th century, including alleged Ku Klux Klan activity and lynchings. Documentation is limited and details vary between sources, but these claims are often cited as part of the tunnel's darker history. Over the years, the Brandy Gap Tunnel has become known for repeated reports of unexplained activity. Visitors frequently describe hearing voices, footsteps, and distant sounds coming from inside the tunnel, even when no one is present. Others report seeing shadowy figures or movement along the tunnel walls and the alcoves. One of the most commonly reported stories involves sightings of a green lantern or green light moving through the tunnel. Multiple individuals over time have described seeing a glowing green light that appears to float through the darkness before disappearing without explanation. Another recurring figure associated with the area is known as the Woman in White. According to local stories, she is said to appear along sections of the North Bend Rail Trail, including areas near the tunnel. The legend is often connected to a tragic train accident in which a woman was struck and killed, and some accounts suggest she was dragged along the tracks. Reports of the Woman in White are not limited to one specific location. Some believe she is seen near multiple tunnels along the rail line, suggesting the phenomenon follows the tracks rather than being tied to a single site. Witnesses usually describe a pale or white-clad figure seen briefly at a distance before vanishing. There are also stories involving apparitions believed to be railroad workers. Some people claim to have seen figures dressed in work clothes standing inside the tunnel, sometimes appearing near the alcoves as if still on duty. Electronic voice phenomenon, or EVP, is another recurring claim associated with the tunnel. Paranormal investigators report capturing unexplained voices on audio recordings that were not heard at the time but became noticeable during playback, often requiring enhancement to hear clearly. Additional reports include sudden temperature changes, feelings of being watched, emotional reactions, and an urge to leave the tunnel before reaching the other end. Some visitors say they feel drawn further inside despite feeling uneasy. Because of the volume and consistency of these reports, the Brandy Gap Tunnel has become a popular location for ghost hunters, hikers, and curiosity seekers. Whether these experiences are caused by history, environment, psychology, or something unexplained remains open to interpretation. As I walked down the trail toward the tunnel, there was an unmistakable creepy vibe to the place. Something about the way the opening slowly comes into view. It just feels heavy. I couldn't help but imagine what it must have been like to stand there decades ago seeing a massive locomotive rushing through this tunnel, almost like the scene from Ghostbusters 2 where the train comes barreling through out of nowhere. The conditions weren't ideal for a full investigation. There was strong wind moving through the tunnel, along with a constant sound of dripping water, so I decided to keep this as a short daytime investigation rather than pushing it longer than necessary. Within about a minute of entering the tunnel, the tablet shut off completely. No warning, no low battery alert. That's something I've never experienced before while using the SLS on an investigation. I connected the camera to the tablet using a cable for external power, and the system powered back on and continued working. Later when I got home, the battery was at 9%. Again, this was after starting the investigation at a full charge, so it's the first time something like that has ever happened to me using the SLS in the field. During my initial setup inside the tunnel, I captured an EVP on my wrist recorder. At the time, I couldn't make out anything clearly, and I'll let you hear it so you can decide for yourself. Just inside the tunnel, I placed my Ghost Stop Solace to establish a baseline and monitor for changes in temperature, electromagnetic fields, and vibration. After getting the SLS back up and running, the Solace registered an EMF spike at 6 milligauss, the highest isolated spike recorded during the entire investigation. Of course, equipment interference can't be completely ruled out, but there are no known power sources inside or around the tunnel, which makes the reading at least worth noting. Toward the end of the investigation, I noticed the light attached to my GoPro repeatedly shut off without explanation. Once I returned to my vehicle, I turned it back on and it worked normally with no further issues. This is definitely a location I like to return to in the future. I'd especially like to further explore the cemetery located above the tunnel and conduct a more in-depth follow-up investigation. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to the next hunt.